What is up, Bad Brood? Eric here with Team Badman. Welcome guys back to another edition of Bad Builds, where we take a look at some of the decks that we have been working on here at Team Badman to give you guys an idea of course, the stuff that we've been working on, to help maybe give you guys a little bit of inspiration for some of your own decks, and to help you consider some cards you guys hadn't before. And today, we are kind of doing the same thing that we did on Tuesday. I can remember the days that we were releasing videos, I promise. But if you guys remember on Tuesday, we did a contributed deck from one of our viewers, Logan Prather, who introduced his Orange Depth Gohan deck to us, and it seemed to go over relatively well. It's a very, very hard-hitting deck. It can gain a surprising amount of anger, and Gohan gives a lot of synergy to the Adept Mastery, and it makes it a little bit more playable. I'm sure some of the advocates of Adept were very, very pleased with that one. Today we are taking a look at the other Orange Mastery that's out right now, the Retribution Mastery, which is pretty much being regarded right now as the strongest mastery to come out of Awakening, and rightfully so. It's got the anger contribution that the Restored Mastery has, while at the same time it has some of the drill flexibility that both Adaptive and Adept used to have, and it makes for some really, really fun interactions, some that are even regarded as a little bit degenerate, looking at Checkup drill and Dismissal, allowing you to constantly recycle drills, get blocks out, and just kind of abuse other drills even to draw extra cards in the case of, say, Possession Drill or Affection Drill, reutilize some of your blocking drills, just do whatever it is that you want to do with the drills. And it's given some stability to a lot of MPs who really kind of want to do the faster anger thing, but didn't quite have it outside of some of the now currently banned masteries such as Red and Raged. We've seen a lot of decks come out of Retribution that have been really, really successful. And today we're taking a step back from a lot of the hero MPs that seem to be in it. You see Vegeta appear in Retribution, Roshi, Trunks, a lot of these MPs can gain super fast anger and have some great name cards to go with. But today we're looking at the villains, and in particular we are looking at Cooler, who is very, very notorious for being just a really, really strong MP stack. His entire stack is fantastic. As soon as you leave one, you've got a lot of stability in just about any style, with the ability to rejuvenate cards, and the ability to still deal out a lot of damage. He can gain anger very quickly, and he's got one of the most outright powerful offensive name cards in the game in Cooler Supernova, which deals not only unpreventable damage, but it can be rejuvenated from the discard pile when entering combat to pop off some board. And that's fantastic for any style. But with the loss of the Enraged Mastery, which seemed to be a lot of where he really fit in, it seemed like the ideas of an MPPV Cooler kind of fell off. There was a little bit more to worry about. You didn't have, the continuous anger from critical damage effects. It was a lot harder to work with the Ascension Mastery, since you want to run Dragon Balls for a full triple threat effect, and you don't want to risk that with Ascension Mastery because you don't want to accidentally banish your Dragon Balls without a way to get them out. So our suggestion today is to look at him in the Retribution Mastery, which of course gives him the free anger. It helps him to get off one really, really quickly, which with Cooler you want to. And not only that, you have to leave one to really be proactive, to start getting that rejuvenation thing going on, to deal out some serious damage. And Orange helps you do that, along with a suite of fantastic anger cards such as Rage, Eruption, Fierce Attack, and now some of the physicals that are even included have some built-in anger into them, which is fantastic. But the thing about this deck is it's a little bit more kind of varied, a little bit more tempo-oriented in some ways. There's plenty of anger hate in here, since a lot of very, very fast anger is really showing up on the horizon. You've got some Dragon Balls actually in the deck for some additional tech, for some usability. You've got a lot of really fun options in here, and I want to thank our guest, Michael Showalter from the Team Badman Kentucky crew, for giving us this deck list. I finally got the chance to play against it last week, and it really is a strong deck. If it gets going, it really, really gets going, can deal out a ton of damage quickly, can gain a lot of anger quickly, and it's one that if you hadn't considered Cooler in a style, I definitely recommend checking this one out. So today we're going to look at dual threat Orange Retribution Cooler, and let's go ahead and get right into it. And with any Orange deck, you need drills. any orange styles out there, both Adept and Retribution now, and the old Adaptive, thrived on drills. They wanted to keep them out, they wanted to pull them out, and Retribution is no different, especially with that pseudo tag team effect that allows you to pull out a drill on your opponent's first turn. And the advantage here is a lot of these drills can get pulled out on the first turn for a variety of different effects. So you've got a little bit of a drill toolbox based on the scenario you're running into. And of course, with the drills, you have to start off with your two blocking drills, Orange Burning Aura Drill and Orange Steady Drill. All of these drills in here are one-of drills, which I would probably build with a little bit more in there just because you don't want them to get banished, you don't want to lose them. But the ability to tech them out quickly is a big, big deal. And with how quickly the deck levels, it's very easy to use the Mastery. You just pull out a drill and then you can pull them out with some of your other drill-oriented effects. And that works out really, really nicely. The advantage of generally knowing what your opponent's going to have ahead of time, being able to pull out a drill to match that and at least buffer you off for a turn or two on some blocks, is really, really solid. And it's a nice alternative to have to using, say, Freezing Drill and a larger quantity of blocks in the deck, because you get that so early game, and if your opponent doesn't have a whole lot of board hate, in which that's kind of fallen off right now because board isn't a huge deal yet, it's very easy to see us lasting on the board just about the entire game. It makes it super easy to wick off a bunch of attacks with the drills. Just fantastic. Next up is one copy of Orange Crying Drill. This one started to see a whole lot of play because one, it's very easy to pull out with the Retribution Mastery. Second is free anger. Third, you can shuffle it in for free stages, which is really nice for a lot of the energy beats heavy deck. And if your opponent's a little bit more kind of control-oriented or may not have a dedicated line of offense, either physically or energy-based, this is a relatively easy one to pull. The free anger is super nice. Between that and Retribution Mastery, that's 3 anger every turn. Really effective, especially as an early pull, since you can't get much right away out of the next drill on the list, Orange Checkup Drill. Of course, we all know Orange Checkup Drill is really strong right now. The extra stage that you gain off it is nice, but it's an afterthought compared to both the end of combat effect, which allows you to rejuvenate 2, totally in line with Cooler's entire nature of rejuvenating cards, and the ability that when it comes out during combat, you get to search out any block in your deck and put it in your hand. You know your opponent's got an energy heavy hand, go ahead and pull out one of your energy blocks, make sure that you're safe. You want to keep some of your stages and you know your opponent might have a strong physical to work with, go ahead and pull out that quick dodge or whatever, gain yourself some stages. There's so much flexibility with Orange Checkup Drill that it's kind of outrageous. The interaction within Dismissal probably should be fixed before it becomes too outrageous. I honestly think so. Next is one copy of Orange Aura Drill. With the loss of modifier from both Adaptive and Adept, it makes it a little bit harder to crit in this deck without having to resort to some of the higher power cards like PowerPoint or Cooler Supernova. So gaining an extra +2 buff off Aura Drill is a really big deal. Of course, you can't pull it out with the Mastery. At least on the first turn. You can pull it out if you level with the Mastery, which is great. And you want to have that modifier, especially in the late game when you want to try to close things out with a ton of damage. So it's nice having that in there. Plus it's got an extra endurance on it. It might only be 1, but that still comes in handy. We've seen it on Smoothness Drill before, and that's enough right there to say, okay, I can use this for endurance. That's pretty sizable. On the opposite end of Aura Drill, we have one copy of Orange Hiding Drill, because we do want to prevent damage, and a lot of life card oriented damage is really coming out of the woodwork. It's been seen a lot with Goku and Vegeta, and of course with a lot of the older villain MPs such as Cooler himself. So you want to be able to reduce some of that damage right out the gate, because there isn't a ton of damage prevention in the deck. There's reasonable endurance, but it's not overkill, so you want to prevent the life card damage as much as possible, and this is going to help you do it. Since we're not an Android, since we don't have the Resolute Mastery to help us prevent damage, this is going to fit in that void. And lastly, we have one copy of Orange Examination Drill. This one's actually one I hadn't considered before, and it's a little bit fun to use from time to time. Whenever you utilize a hit effect, you can raise or lower a player's anger 1 level. If you do manage to pull it out with the drill or with drill tech like Orange PowerPoint, you still get the hit effect right there. It's an easy means of kind of tempering off an opponent's anger if they're trying to anger too fast, or if you just want to put yourself up to the next level, you go ahead and use that hit effect, and you're basically all set to go. Not too many issues there. That rounds out a relatively nice drill package, reasonably solid. It's got a lot of variety to it, and it really is kind of a toolbox based on what you want to pull out at any given point in the game. So that's extremely useful altogether, and it brings it all together with the mastery very, very nicely. So after that, of course, we have to do setups. Setups are a really, really obvious thing to have in a lot of decks, even if it's just a really light line. And this deck, again, just like last week's, or earlier this week's, we have a very light lineup. It's only 2 visiting the past, because you want to pull cards out of the discard pile. The only ones you get to automatically rejuvenate out of there when entering are, of course, the Supernovas. And yeah, that does help you get cards back, but sometimes you just want to get out that fierce attack or that power point or some kind of tech for your opponent, whatever it may end up being. This is going to help you do that. It relatively speaks for itself, so there's no complaints there. Next up, we have the events, and there are just a few events in this deck to kind of take advantage of everything that Cooler wants to do. Be a little bit reactive, be a little bit proactive, and the lineup really reflects that. Of course, we're going to start off with 3 copies of STAGEDOWN. We want those attacks to go through. You want to deal the big damage and be as effective as you can possibly be with this deck, especially when you've got powerhouse attacks like Orange is known to have, as well as Cooler Supernova. So you want to make sure those go through. STAGEDOWN is the de facto standard for that. There may be stronger options now, particularly since Mercenary Tau came out, but of course, STAGEDOWN is still kind of mandatory in a lot of offensively oriented decks, and it does exactly the job that you want to do here. Next is 2 copies of Tug of War. This helps on a few different fronts for Orange, as Orange first doesn't have a super strong anger hate without running some dedicated freestyle options, which a couple of them are actually in this deck. But it does help to have that extra 2 anger lowering, as well as the card replacing itself. And it's still usable even when it's in the life deck. 2 endurance is great, banishing out an ally is great, especially if you're facing an opponent like Gohan or the new Cell, who's got just an absolute wall of allies that you're trying to get your way through. So this is going to help, especially if you can't land an attack like Cooler Supernova to start critting off some of the allies. So it's very usable tech here, and alongside a card like Orange STAGEDOWN, it's just about all the ally removal that you would really need, so it works well here. 1 copy of Villainous Energy Sphere. Cooler, especially in the early game, does like to be a little bit reactive, kind of based on whatever your opponent might be doing. Especially if they're trying to get particular cards out of your hand with something like Stare Down or Confrontation, or if they're trying to run, styled events, maybe stage drain options, or say Black Scout Maneuver to try and get rid of your Supernovas. So having that sphere is really nice to have. Just a little bit more of a reactive, slower kind of option. It's not quite as effective in this deck as Stare Down really is, but having it at 1 is still very, very useful as kind of a pinch hitter whenever you need it. So it's solid there. And of course, time is a warrior's tool. So next we're going to go into the physical combat lineup, and compared to a lot of decks we've done recently, this lineup's relatively small, which is very nice. It's very refreshing in that regard. So we have in here 3 copies of Orange Launcher. This is the de facto crit option for Orange, because the immediate on-demand critical damage effect is fantastic to have. It does deal life card damage, which fits in line with our physicals here. It's got a little bit of extra endurance on it, but the main reason you've got is for that pinch crit. Very, very useful for that. Especially since we are running Dragon Balls in the deck, which I will get to at the end of the deck list here, just because they're a little bit of an ending list to kind of go through. So very, very useful for that. And alongside that is 2 copies of Wallbreaker, which is still very, very strong for stopping a lot of really, really prominent anger. A lot of the decks that are going to want to do it faster only have a few options for removing attached cards, and forcing them to kind of use them on Wallbreaker is, of course, very, very usable. If you prevent their anger gain for even just 1 turn, that still can be enough time to win you a game, especially with decks like Orange Retribution Trunks and Orange Retribution Roshi being able to level so unbelievably quickly. It's not here for offense purposes, never was, never will be, but that anger stopping, we all know how good it is, and it's going to continue to be that good. Of course, we also need to have blocks because we want to keep our stages to throw all those energies that I'm going to get to in just a second. So we have 3 copies of Orange Quick Dodge. a very, very strong block right now. Gaining those extra stages in orange is great because you want to keep them. You want to throw the big, powerful energy attacks. And preventing a little bit of extra damage is great. The only downside here is if you're on Cooler 2, it doesn't proc that power if you've used it, unless they throw an unpreventable attack. Or they, or something like Vegeta 2 to where you can't actually prevent any of the damage from the attack. But you still gaining stages is a big, big deal, and it fits in very well here. And 3 copies of Orange Refocus helps you get some of those drills back if they get destroyed, because otherwise you don't have a good way to get them out of the discard pile. Gains a little extra anger, has a little extra endurance, solid physical block all around. And now we get to, again, the bulk of the deck. While earlier this week we had a deck that was very, very heavy on physical combats, this week it's all about the big, boomy energy combats, and Orange is fantastic style for that. But if we're talking energy combats and Cooler, we have to start off with some named cards, considering that both of them are energy combats. So we have 3 copies, obviously, of Cooler Supernova. A very, very strong name card. 6 life unpreventable, raises your anger 2, doesn't banish itself after use, which is absolutely insane to me. And if it's in the discard, you get to rejuvenate it to pop off some boards. So it's offensively proactive, it's defensively reactive, pushes along the win con very effectively. It's just a really, really good name card. Super, super good. And 1 copy of Cooler's Rebirth. Running multiple copies is a little too slow, a little bit too clunky in my mind, and I think Michael agreed. We discussed it a little bit, and having the additional option to get some of those cards back from the banish zone, those styled cards, is great because there are a lot of really strong cards that do banish themselves after use, which we will get to shortly here. So having that is really nice. It stacks itself on top, so that's an extra 3 endurance goes on top of the life deck. Really nice for that, but you don't really need more than 1. You honestly don't. It'd be a little too clunky, a little too slow if you're trying to run multiple, especially since it's a fast anger beats kind of deck. So it's limited to 1 for a reason. It might test better, higher, depending on how the metagame shifts, but for now 1's good. 1 is good. Now we're finally into the styled stuff. There's a lot of great styled options in Orange. Of course, starting off with 3 copies of Orange PowerPoint. It's one of the most rock-solid energy attacks in the entire game. 2 for 6, Endurance 3, lets you pull out one of those drills, in which it's really our primary drill tech here, but it's strong offensively. It's one that you can force your opponent to block out, which can open them up to some stronger offensive options, which that's a big deal. That really is. In a pinch, that endurance is phenomenal. It's obvious why it's in here. It's one of those obvious styled cards. Next is 3 copies of Orange Counterball. Cooler likes to rejuvenate. Counterball helps you rejuvenate. It's a win-win right here. Extra endurance, 1 stage for 4 life, is a plenty solid attack. Selective rejuven, if it hits, it's a total of 3 cards rejuvenated. Very, very solid attack. Absolutely no complaints about this one. I love it in any Orange deck, and this is no exception. Next is 3 copies of Orange Fierce Attack, or as I like to refer to it, the special styled version of I'll Dig Your Grave. Just so outrageously strong. If you guys saw one of our morning matchups earlier this week, you'll know how I feel about Orange Fierce Attack. Like, why is it such a good card? It's so unbelievably good. 1 stage, 4 life, all your style attacks become unpreventable for the remainder of combat. 2 endurance on it, and if it hits, it's a 4 anger swing between raising yours 2 and lowering your opponent's anger 2. Really, really strong. May not have the modifier from adaptive anymore, so it's a guaranteed crit, but it's still strong nonetheless. Still fantastic. Warrants a 3 of in any Orange deck. Absolutely any. Next is 3 copies of Orange Eruption. It's very, very similar to Orange Fierce Attack, but a little bit stronger in my mind because you get the anger outright as opposed to having to hit with it. Sure, you lose out on endurance. Sure, you lose out on power. It's only 2 life cards instead of 4. Sure, it's banished after use. There are a lot of excuses we can make for this one, but when it comes to Orange anger cards, this one still sits at the top of the list, and it's mandatory in this deck. Absolutely mandatory. Next is 2 copies of Orange Stare Down. Only 2. Because it's not super active on either of our win cons. The anger is nice from all the other cards, but this doesn't really offer it. The higher damage is nice from some of the other cards, but this doesn't offer it. But it's in here because of board hate. Board hate is a big deal. And while Cooler does have with Supernovas, you can't guarantee it's going to be there. And sometimes you'd rather just banish the cards outright, especially in the case of a Goku or a Roshi matchup, where they do have levels that can help them pull those steps and drills back out of the discard pile. So you want to have that in there. I'd probably run this at 3 of, honestly, because I like it at that. But with board not being so popular anymore, 2 of is fairly reasonable, especially for such a kind of normal level attack for Orange. 2 for 4, banish something on the board. It's very logical, but it doesn't really warrant 3 of at the moment. In the future it might, but for now, no. 2 copies of Orange Right Beam, which is one of Orange's options for lowering anger, both on a reactive and proactive level. If you're proactive with it, it's a 3 for 5, can't be stopped by a non-styled card, and it lowers your opponent's anger too, which is really strong. Plus, if it gets rejuvenated, lowers your opponent's anger 1 levels, which is very easy to do with cards like Orange Counterball, or any Cooler's powers, or you know how it is. So it's really easy to use it on a variety of levels to lower your opponent's anger. And it's really effective tech for that. It's one of the few options in here for it outside of the obvious wall breaker that I've already mentioned. And it really helps slow faster angering opponents down in the early to mid game, which is where they really want to try and hit their strides. So this is a great option for here. 2 copies of Energized Strike. Speaking of anger hate, hey look, Energized Strike, nice to see you. This is a fantastic anger option right now to really slow down opponents, because a lot of the anger that's gained in the current game is really passive. You've got the Orange Retribution Mastery, you've got the Red Ascension Mastery, you've got a lot of these MP powers that help you gain anger when etc. happens, like Cooler when you take unprevented damage, or Trunks when you rejuvenate a card from the banish zone, raise your anger 1 level. You guys know how it is. Energized Strike is really strong right now, and since there isn't massive anger hate in here that other styles like Blue might have, being able to shut that down is super effective. It's going to shut down your own Retribution Mastery in your own level 2, so that sucks a little bit. But this one is great for those emergency situations where you know your opponent's going to try to level with some of those passive effects. So it earns its spot here, and should earn its spot in a lot of decks, being a super solid freestyle that if it hits, it replaces itself. Absolutely great. And 2 copies of Blinding Energy Move for our last energy attack. Sometimes you just gotta escape combat, sometimes your hand is really bad, sometimes it's not great. And that's exactly what this card is here to do. Ending combat is really strong right now. Has been for quite a while, and it's going to continue to be. So this is your offensive option to do so. And while it may be more effective in MPs who can do it more regularly, such as Yamcha or Android 18, it still fits a spot here. No complaints at all. And of course, we need to have blocks, just like the physical side. And this block lineup's a little bit different. It's not necessarily blocked down like 3-3, but there's a little bit of something for a little bit of everything. We have 2 copies of Orange Energy Deflection, which is one that's really kind of forgotten, especially amid the sea of energy catches and energy absorptions, all these other fantastic blocks. But Energy Deflection is strong right now due to the plethora of non-styled attacks that are out there. This one is also anger hate, lowers your opponent's anger 2. If it was non-styled, you get to rejuvenate 2. So again, fits into Cooler, ain't that funny. Works out really well, and it should be a consideration for some other Orange decks that may either have a hard time with anger or want to get cards back because they burn themselves out too fast. Maybe TN? Who knows? Next is 2 copies of Orange Dismissal. We all know about this one. Shuffle in a drill, get a drill back, do your crazy drill recycling thing. Plenty solid for that. And 1 copy of Orange Withdrawal, another kind of forgotten block, courtesy of Vengeance. This one has a little anger hate, lowers your opponent's anger 1 level, stops energy attack. But the nifty part about this one is if it's in your hand at the end of combat, you can banish it from your hand, search your life deck for a drill, and place it on the top of your life deck. So if you're playing a little bit of the slower game, maybe around mid game, you're on level 2, level 3, and kind of just want to sit there and stabilize a little bit, you have the option to pull out any drill that you want from your deck, and with the toolbox options that are in here, there's plenty of stuff to pull out. It's really nifty for that. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, we do have Dragon Balls. I did mean to get to them earlier, but talking about all the other stuff, these kind of became a little bit of an afterthought. And that's kind of what they're there for. They're not there to be front and center. They're there to be kind of emergency backup tech for just about any situation you might need. In this case, we've got 3 Dragon Balls. We have Namek Dragon Ball 2, Namek Dragon Ball 3, and Namek Dragon Ball 7. They're all in here for apparent reasons. Ball 2 contributes to the anger hate very, very well, lowers opponents who might try level 2 fast or might use Unleashed or anything like that. Ball 3 lets you recycle your hand a little bit and kind of set yourself up a little better, especially if you drew into maybe one too many of those drills that you have in the deck and you don't like having, or maybe you drew into better options with the ball and you just want to play a little bit safer. And Ball 7, the ultimate equalizer, 6-card swing, set yourself up with all those powerful attacks, your blocks, whatever you might need. This one can easily close out a game. We already know all about that. Other options to consider are the Earth Dragon Ball equivalents. Earth Ball 2 is great for those camping decks to get them, off of their level 1 or their level 2, whatever level they may want to camp on. Messing with them is great. Plus, it's still got the leveling hate downward. The advantage here is, it only affects your opponent. So that's at least nifty. Ball 3, Earth Ball 3, helps you get cards out of the discard pile, which is, again, a big thing for Cooler. Big advantage here. And Earth Ball 7 lets you end combat on a dime, which is something sometimes you really do need. It's why the Blinding Energy moves are in here. So that's a consideration, but the Namek Dragon Balls have been great. Ultimately, that one's up to taste, and I like it either way. So finally getting to see this deck last weekend, getting to experience it and figure it all out, it's a good spot for Cooler to be in right now. Because like I said at the start of the video, Cooler has to leave 1. He has to leave there or it's going to be a real uphill battle. And this is a style that helps him do it very, very quickly. There are a lot of options to remove attached cards from you, remove attached cards from your opponent, easy crits in here. That's one of the big advantages to Cooler being in here as opposed to certain other MPs who may not have quite as much offensive prowess. Of course, you would have the option to Unleashed if you wanted to. Go ahead and just level really quickly, get to that 3 and that 4, and just kind of do your thing, rejuvenate all your cards. But you want to have the extra win con, and Cooler's so good at MPPV anyway that putting him in a style that is now kind of becoming the MPPV sort of niche is really obvious. It is. He's got tons of anger, tons of offensive power. It's a really fun deck, and if you've been trying to figure out somewhere to put Cooler besides the obvious blue Resolute, this is one to consider. It feels very Cooler. It plays very Cooler. It might just be the new Cooler style in general, and I encourage you guys to try it. So that's going to do it for this edition of Bad Builds. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to click that like button, give me a thumbs. I would love to see them. You guys know how I feel about that. If not, click the dislike button and let me know what you guys didn't like. Seriously, I'm not kidding around. Just let me know. Don't get offended by it. I want to know what you guys don't like so I can change it for future episodes. I want to make it the best I can for you guys. So I'm really trying. So just let me know. Also, if you guys haven't hit that subscribe button down below, please be sure to do so that you can follow this series and all of our other series that we've got going on. We've got morning matchups in full swing, and I've got some really cool matches planned up here really soon, so be sure to check those out. Xenoverse 2 is rolling, and as we get into the end of the year, we're going to start, poking at some other stuff, and once the new year starts, we're going to have a couple of new series as well, so be sure to check those out. And lastly, if you guys haven't found us on social media, those links are down below too. So you guys can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Libsyn. So be sure to check all those out. Check out our latest podcast featuring world champion Sandeep Kunubaka and everyone's favorite judge, Jason Toro. And just come say hey. We'd love to interact with you guys. So that's going to do it for this video. I'm Eric with Team Badman, signing out. So thank you guys for watching. And like always, stay bad. We'll see you guys next time. Catch you later. Whoa! Where you want to... Oh, come on. Really? She put poop on my floor. No. Hand me up. No, it's not real poop. But it's poop enough. Yeah, you got me. You got me.